times for all of us. I hope that 2021 will be good as promising to be, and that this year's seminars will substitute webinars back as it was before. I'm really happy that this webinar gives me the opportunity to see many familiar faces, but also to meet new people from other working groups, especially ones that we have extensively email contact recently, in recent couple of months. Well, my name is Slobodan Velevski, and I'm an associate professor at the Faculty of Architecture in Skopje, North Macedonia. And today I will co-host the whole webinar, these 3 parts of the webinar tracks, together with my colleague Luis Santiago Baptista. Before opening the first session, entitled Mapping, I would like to acknowledge once again that the whole event today will be recorded for the purposes of further dissemination of the work of our COST network, and therefore, by participating, you agree to these conditions. I would also like to tell you that at the end of each part, so today webinar have 3 parts, as Luis mentioned, we will have 15 minutes for a session for questions and answers. So if you want to pose a question, please notify us before sending the question, or just asking for a word through the conversation and chat bar. In each part, we will have 6 presentations that include a presentation of 4 project statements and 2 respondents that will try to give an overview of the projects regarding the topics of meaningfulness, appropriation, and integration, respectively. All sessions will end up with a time slot for questions and answers, and also a break between each of them, because it's going to be a long day for all of us. I hope very fruitful. So the first part today is entitled Mapping, and its purpose is to establish relationship between the fieldwork projects and their engagement in a spatial and social framework within the particularities and values of a given context. It tries to understand mapping not just as a tool of representing and a kind of record of places and activities, but also as a spatial experience by which we can recognize meaningfulness of the places of the existing communities. So in the first part, we are opening the session. Maybe I could share the screen now, just to have more. Yeah. Yes. So in the first part, we are opening the session with the project entitled Narrating the Urban Fabric of My Own Historic Town by Juan Garcia Esparza, a member of the Working Group 2, which is associate professor coming from University Jaume I from Castellón, Spain. I really hope that the pronunciation of the names is good enough. Unfortunately, this session will be slightly shortened because due to health constraints, our dear colleague and member of the Working Group 4, Emilio Gallardo Saborido, canceled his attendance and won't present today. Therefore, after Juan, we will have Nevena Đaković, a professor and scholar from the Faculty of Dramatic Arts in Belgrade, which is also a member of the Working Group 2, will respond to Juan's presentation and give an overview of the presented projects. I would just ask you, although we have 10 more minutes in between, I will just ask you both Juan and Nevena to be in the framework of, let's say, 10-15 minutes. Juan, if you're ready, I could give you floor to you, and I will. You can share your screen.
Can you hear me? No?
Maybe a bit louder.
Now, maybe? No?
Well, I'm hearing you very not very well.
Maybe now?
Yes, perfect.
Yes?
Yes.
Well, my presentation, as Slobodan said, well, it's about narrating the the urban fabric, but I will modify. It's about narrating our own urban fabric. Can you hear my screen? Yeah. Well, the objective of this project was to put the attention on architectural elements that were meaningful for communities in an area of study that it's located in a small region on the east coast of Spain. And well, this study includes 10 historic towns with common characteristics such as demography, economy, society. And well, the architecture, as well you can see, is still characterized by some vernacular dwellings. Just 1 second. Okay, right. The situation that is being observed here has to do with a townscape that somehow joins values, material values, together with social ones, such as recreation of activities, or recreation of practices, of traditional practices. These are well seen as new forms of appropriation, and well, if well perceived as well as an integration that happen on a daily basis. But what we have realized that they lack an adequate assessment tool. These are well social and spatial challenges at stake that have to do with methodologies that help explain and evaluate the distinctiveness, not only external but internal, of sites. And well, I'm referring to the character of these places, and do so by rethinking the extent to which these people or this social value affects and performs alternative expressions of legacy. The study, well, in the end, seeks to better approach or appropriate heritage that does not displace these reinterpretive activities, right? These everyday life of communities, and the ultimate goal is to make locals protagonists as placemakers, right? I'm referring to the form of undertaking practices and adaptations in buildings, mainly in the built environment. And well, the study pretends to avoid those general assumptions of the laws, policy, etc., and stick particularly in those elements that have great value or significance for them. About the methodology we follow, but it follows existing forms of assessment to improve the linkage between tangible and intangible values. I'm referring to methodologies such as the historic urban landscape approach or the historic area assessment from the English Heritage. But in our case, these methods were informed by observation, mainly interviews, planning and training activities. Altogether, offered an integrative understanding of the character of these places. Additionally to this data collection, meetings, workshops, and heritage days serve to investigate how the intangible informs the tangible, and vice versa. And well, here is a kind of an example of this data collection on site. And well, fieldwork. This fieldwork then later was put in a digital database that help us somehow collect all graphic information through a kind of rubric in which the main characteristics of these built environments, these places, was noted and georeferenced, right here on the left-hand side, you can see a kind of photo elicitation activity with people of these towns. Finally, well, the specificities of this study, of this now finished study, demonstrate that, well, somehow appropriation and integration of cultural heritage conservation serves or can serve as a framework in need of social contextualization. And now I'm placing here this map because this research is being conducted in 5 medium-sized World Heritage cities in Spain, such as Avila, which is the old town you are seeing here. And what this work is now collected into books, one in Spanish language and the other in English language. And well, one was published by the end of last year, and the other is now in the process of being printed, etc. So, well, as long as I understand I have time, I would like to play a quick video, 2 minutes video. I don't know if the audio would be available for you because, well, I don't know. I'm gonna play it just in case it's 2 minutes video, and each showcase our placemaking experiences in these towns. The essence of this video is to promote these Heritage Days experiences we had with locals, right? And I would like to specify that this is an activity or that was not at all managed or ruled by external people. It was entirely organized and coordinated by neighbors, right? So I'm gonna play it.
La Diputación de Castellón y la Universidad Jaume I vuelven a sumar esfuerzos para poner en valor patrimonio cultural e histórico del interior de la provincia.
El objetivo principal es poner un poco de conocimiento patrimonio de estos municipios y que la gente de los propios municipios se involucre en el reconocimiento de su propio patrimonio.
Cerca de 400 personas se han inscrito en la tercera edición de las jornadas de centros históricos e itinerarios culturales, que se celebran en los 10 municipios que conforman la candidatura a Patrimonio Mundial de la UNESCO, Camins de Peñagolosa.
Estáis haciendo una labor muy importante para que la gente conozca la forma de vivir de los pueblos. Y sobre todo, que los pueblos nos reciban a nosotros y que cada año se pueda quedar más gente a vivir aquí.
Jornadas que están teniendo un rotundo éxito gracias a la labor desinteresada de los voluntarios de cada uno de los pueblos.
Els contactes de voluntaris ja de 3 anys de jornades, el que fan és organitzar-ho tot. Se preocupen de buscar la gent que ja coneixen els pobles, que tenen aquesta vinculació en el mateix poble i els oficis, la gastronomia, són els que se preocupen de coordinar-ho tot.
En 2018, estas visitas se centran en aspectos relacionados con el patrimonio gastronómico y etnográfico, con la colaboración del proyecto Castelló, Ruta de Sabor.
Així el que proponis un poquet és la història del poble, per un recorregut que hem fet les carrers i hem parat en els puestos on se fa algo de gastronomia. Hem parat en la cooperativa i en el forn. Per finalitzar, ja hem pogut fer una carta de patatí.
El objetivo es dar a conocer al mundo el patrimonio que rodea al Gegant de Pedra y del que nos sentimos tan orgullosos.
Right. Well, just brief comments about this video. The ultimate goal, as you have seen, well, is to let people know their own place, right, for neighbors, but also to, well, spread this knowledge to others, to visitors, and make them be part of it. What we have well, retrieved from visitors is that they exceptionally value these activities because of the approach or the proximity with locals, with neighbors, and just precisely because of this first-hand knowledge. And well, the content of these activities, as you have seen, it was related to history, gastronomy, ethnography, and other intangible values linked to the built environment. That's all. I hope it's fine for you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Juan. I think it was very brief and concise, but very clear presentation. Maybe it's for me like that because we all go through the projects that you have already submitted in the past period. But that's why we have Nevena Đaković now, that she can basically make a quick, brief review explaining how she understands the project that was presented by you. Nevena, could you share your presentation?
As I already told you, I don't have a presentation.
Okay,
I'm
yes.
going to talk, and just one slight correction. I'm not Đaković, I'm Đaković. D.
Đaković.
D like Dublin.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I will change that. Yes.
It's all right. Thanks a lot for allowing me to be the respondent in this case, because I'm not a member of the working group, and I haven't worked with you through the project and through the preparation for this webinar. So it's a huge challenge for me to try to provide other perspective, since I'm not, like most of you, are an architect. In fact, I'm a comparative literature. So I'm going to respond in terms of cultural memory narratives, and in terms of cinema, of course. So the very title of the webinar, Mapping, Performing, Sharing, implies that the mapping corresponds to the meaningfulness, that it is related with the methodology, and that is the tool for achieving meaningfulness. Because the maps are linked to the mission of offering local communities rereading or innovative interpretation of these spaces. They assert the rapid emotional involvement of the beneficiaries, and they contribute to the reappropriation of the certain lieu de mémoire, and that is going to be one of my points. Also, the maps offer new narratives that help raise the level of meaningfulness of these spaces for their inhabitants, but also for the larger community. And in that sense, I'm only half in agreement with Juan when he says that he aims for the global response. I would rather say it aims for the promotion of the local response, or of the local nesting of the whole thing. So basically, I think that Juan uses the mapping as the basis for the identification and for making the strategic recommendations for the urban heritage protection, while Emilio, in addition, considers the maps as the part of the latter phase of dissemination, or actual codification and integration into the broader set of the tangible heritage. Since Emilio was not able to present the paper, I'm just going to say a few words about his presentation, and then to proceed with my ramification or rethinking of these things. So, while the first paper fulfills the first point of the workshop, cartography organized by a specific theme or issue, discernible in the background of the field work is also the exploration of the participatory processes of the citizens that work bottom top. The other paper, or Emilio's paper, comprehensively meets the other topic of this part of the webinar. It establishes links and relations between various points of interest in a broader map that explains the connection between meaningfulness, but also the later activities concerning the urban spaces, sharing and integration, or performing and sharing. And all that, in fact, both papers, I would say, eventually expose a latent or hidden cultural structure that is revealed by archival and on-site research and visualization. Emilio's paper is entitled Flamenco Cartography and is directly concerned with intangible heritage, while the mapping performs twofold role. It pursues the history of flamenco music and its dialogue with urban spaces as lieu de mémoire in one of the main cities where flamenco originated, Seville, but also it's a pilot model that is to be applied in the research of all similar cases like Granada, Cadiz, Jerez. The idea is to offer new palimpsestic reading or innovative interpretation of the cityscape from the filter, or seen through the filter, of the history of flamenco, because flamenco is a national identity trademark from historical, cultural, but also, I would say, affective or emotional perspectives. Second, the maps narrate the non-material heritage and offer new stories that help raising the level of meaningfulness, again, for the inhabitants, but also for the larger, I would say, world and tourist community. Regarding the instruments, methods, in the outcome, the project resorts to two different groups of tools. The first group are designated scientific maps for the tourist routes around Seville, and in the second group, the methodological approach is linked with the artistic and cinematic creation. The team members are now involved in pre-production of a short film devoted to flamenco performance in the local historical neighborhood of Seville. And I'm very glad that Juan has shown us this wonderful short movie, because it provides also great link with Emilio's endeavor. So this idea to involve a film, in fact, is of broader importance, I would say, because it marks the diversification of team members and supports the interdisciplinarity, because in terms we have now interdisciplinarity between the theory and creative practice or arts. And on the other hand, beside cinema and music, in this case, it also mobilizes the literature heritage related to flamenco. So the film basically would use historical approach to expose issues that affect the European, Spanish, Andalusian contemporary societies, characterized by social movements, or I would say phenomena like prostitution, class conflicts, or LGBTQ rights, which is exactly a more modern, I would say, more modern filters and approaches. My response refers to theoretical premise that redefine the possibilities and effects of the mapping and offer theoretical reconsiderations of the mapping as part of the narrative making. In fact, narrative making is also the moment of our two following processes. The second point is general reference about history films that become memory-making films, or films as memory-making practice. Mary Lou Ryan, Kenneth Foot, and Mao Zazariaho, in their book Narrating the Space, Spatializing Narratives, where narrative theory and geography meet, propose multi-perspective analysis that holds special importance, or might hold special importance for this academic research, because they deal with the space with the points, or modes where space can intersect with narrative within the broad framework of the cultural geography. In neatly and widely divided topics, but that perfectly fit within broad area of cultural geography, they suggest several types of mapping employed also in these cases. These, I would say, these modes are the mapping of the characters' movements in narrative, the genesis of narrative in real or imaginary maps, or readers' cognitive maps of narrative space, maps that narrate the unfolding of historical events. And all these things we can recognize in the project we've just heard about, because you can map, in fact, the people's movements in the city space that is taken as a narrative. And these movements, mapping the movements of the people, in fact, is in accordance with the Lefebvre's strategy of architecture, where the movements of people around the city redefine and restructure the city space itself, because they point to the main points of interest and of everyday use that would be generated or that would pop up in the cities. Then we have the genesis of narrative in real or imaginary maps, meaning the genesis of the narrative of the real life, everyday life, and the genesis of the historical or memory narratives. And those memory narratives are in fact the imaginary maps, are given as the imaginary maps. Of course, the most obvious case is that maps narrate the unfolding of historical events in the space. And in that sense, as much as I can see, Juan managed to map that perfect moment in time of the transgression of the inland rural places into the urbanized spaces, in fact, to capture that transgression, or that was at one point, it was a decay of the urban cities, of the urban places into the inland rural, more or less, areas. And now we have the capturing, he tries to capture, and he manages to capture through the maps, the other transgression that would happen in the future, revival of that urban spirit that has somehow disappeared due to historical circumstances. the item about readers' cognitive maps, of course, refers to Frederick Jameson and his research based upon Kevin Lynch's notion of cognitive mapping, the research he has done in his book, The Geopolitical Aesthetic Cinema and Space in the World System. So, all these mappings assure spatial, locational, and material perspectives on the patterns and dynamics of the explored areas, cultural practices, memory patterns, or heritage in making. Dealing with issues of memory in progress, they demonstrate the ways in which cityscape and its constituents are embedded into systems of meaning and partake in social and ideological discourses. Interest in site-specific memory and memorial sites has grown rapidly because they both reflect and expose for the study social tensions, political realities, and cultural values. And of course, that is the research topic of the appropriation and integration as well. Also, the mapping, as I've said at the beginning, reveals the narratives about the space, the narratives in space, spatiality of the narrative, and narrativity of the space. Maps, in this case, also record the intricate play of memory makers and memory markers, discovering new memory markers, like through flamenco historical links, of until that moment not recognized cultural memory. Memory marker or heritage site works as memory maker on individual and collective level in return. Newly found lieu de mémoire as memory maker enriches the maps and the list of the designated signs for the memory markers. So we can expect to find a new map sign for memory markers that fits the new historical optique, flamenco, or let's say LGBTQ liminal history of the city or historical places of the city. The two-way conversion of makers into the markers and vice versa is supported through recontextualization within different theme frameworks, followed by fragmentation, loss, recovery of memory and heritage, as according to Moritz Halbach. It is hardly necessary to emphasize that the memory makers and markers are also identity signs. Conversely, new memories develop and acquire another reality because they henceforth provide individuals with the markers needed to situate their identity. The other remark, or the other part of my talk, is obviously inspired by the non-presented paper and the film we have seen due to Juan's great presentation, and it is about filmmaking segment or films involved in this research and in mapping. Presumption is that the filmmaking segment reflects the moment of another transgression or the concept of this project, the film history, from history film into the memory making films, and that the role played by diverse media in the process is in question. So, I quote Astrid Earle, asking once again what it is that turns some movies, history film, into powerful memory making films, a preliminary answer can now be given. Certain intra and intermediate strategies are responsible for marking them out as a media of cultural memory. So in fact, what we have from that intra and intermediate strategies in these papers, we have plenty of these. Even in Juan's presentation, we are given the idea that gastronomy is a part of that, is a sort of media and is part of that intra and intermediate strategies. These strategies, in fact, prepare the ground for the movies, lead reception along certain paths, open up and channel public discussion. However, such strategies endow fictions only with the potential for memory making. This potential has to be realized in the process of reception. And at that moment, in fact, this whole project, and especially this webinar, in a way explores the preparation of the old maps, fictions, cityscapes, and other things to be accepted as the memory-making media and to be realized as the part of the cultural memory. So novels and movies must be read and viewed by a community as a media of cultural memory. And in fact, in this case, cityscape has to be read and perceived, percepted by a community as a media, as a space of cultural memory. And that is sustained through this Holocaust action, because we narrate the city as the cultural memory through different media. Films that are not watched or books that are not read, cityscape as particular media text, may provide the most intriguing images of the past, yet they will not have any effect in memory cultures. What is needed is a certain kind of context in which novels and films are prepared and received as memory shaping. In fact, we can rephrase what we need. What is needed is a certain kind of context in which cityscape is prepared and received as a memory shaping one. Thus, films about inland rural places or about flamenco, linked with the previous research from mapping the tours or the city themselves, exemplify the way one can prepare the context, make the fiction accepted and consumed by the audience as cultural memory. In fact, they do one thing more. They prepare the cityscape to be consumed as a fiction, either in cinema, then it becomes cinematic cityscape, or in the books, or in some other medium. In future, the same audience that we lead, that we prepare for the certain kind of perception and interpretation, would feature as a perfect witness and a participant of the magical media transformation of history fiction into memory making, diverse media fiction. And of course, and the recognition of the memory making fiction links with the appropriation and integration. What do I emphasize all the time? Memory in making, because through mapping we can catch that moment, that intangible moment of memory making, or a memory as a work in progress. And that is quite evident in the, I would say, more professional architectural maps that Juan employs, and that is more also visible, even more visible in the other paper we have not heard. So mapping in conjunction with narratives and storytelling is a way of performing past memory heritage and of their sharing in reception, but also in the collective authorship of the project we've just heard about. I hope I'm within the time limits.
Well, perfect. Thank you, Nevena. Thank you. Yeah, you're in the time limits, that's for sure. But also, thank you very much for your thorough and precise overview to the both projects. Although unfortunately we were not able to follow Emilio's presentation. What we can do now, maybe if Juan want to make a very quick comment, 1-2 minutes, or we can leave that for the questions and answers series. So Juan, if you have just to, if you want to have just a really brief comment, maybe now, but also it would be perfect if all of the presenters give a comment to the comments that they're receiving in the question and answer series. I'm sure that Juan would like to comment something on Nevena understanding of his work. Juan, you should, your microphone.
Yeah, yourself.
Yeah. Not really. I mean, I quite understand the point of Nevena, and well, I share her ideas. So I'll give way to others' comments.
Okay. So maybe maybe at the end of this part, so Juan, also Clara and Fatma, which are following, could also give a reflection to the comments that they're getting from the respondents. Well, thank you very much, Juan and Nevena as well, for this really nice opening of the session. Now, next is the second part. We have where we have a project called Street Art C, Roots of Graffitis and Street Art in Porto and Northern Portugal. This project will be presented by Clara Sarmento, a professor and a director of Center for Intercultural Studies at the Polytechnic of Porto. After Clara, the second presentation will be conducted by Fatma Tanish, that will introduce to us the project Port City Narratives, Cosmopolitan History of Izmir. Fatma is a PhD researcher at the Delft University of Technology. Both projects will be commented by Annalisa Seti, that is a respondent coming from the methodological groups, so from the working group 3. Annalisa is a lecturer and a professor affiliated with 2 universities in Ireland. Of course, all of you feel free to present yourself briefly before starting your presentation. So Clara, I could give you can take the floor and please share screen with your presentation.
Thank you, Slobodan. So I'm now going to share my screen and I hope you can see. Just tell me something, please. Can you see, please, my screen? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you for your invitation and good morning, everybody. As Slobodan has already said, my name is Clara Sarmiento and I'm a professor at the Polytechnic of Porto and also a researcher at the Center for Intercultural Studies. And today I'm going to share with you some conclusions and ongoing evolutions of the project Street Art Say, Roots of Graffiti and Street Art in Porto and Northern Portugal. I will start by contextualizing the project a little. So I would start by saying that the project Street Art Say of the Center for Intercultural Studies of the Polytechnic of Porto, and hence we call it SAY, that's the acronym for Center for Intercultural Studies. This project started in October 2017 as an open online repository of images and roots of graffiti and street art in Porto and other medium-sized cities of northern Portugal. Cultural and visual studies are the main research fields within the project. Stakeholders include local municipalities, artists, agents of local economy, art galleries, tourism agencies, academia, the community, and the media. The project website that you can see here, and please visit, functions as a virtual museum and digital archive with more than 3,250 images collected up to the autumn of 2020, and they are distributed along 13 geographical routes, organized in 30 maps and 270 points of interest. The geographical routes so far have been organized as follows. We have the routes in the city of Porto that include Bolhão, Boa Vista, Constituição, Dragon Stadium, that is to say East Side Porto, Marquês, São Bento, and Trindade. We also have routes in Greater Porto, or that is to say in satellite smaller cities around Porto, including Vila do Conde, Senhora da Hora, Matosinhos, Lessa da Palmeira, Sana Média em Festa, Lessa de Baliu, Maia, and also the nearby city of Aveiro, 50 kilometers south of Porto, that also is included in this project with its own route. Through these routes of Street Art Say, works become accessible to the public, whether they are irreverent and illegal or ratified and commissioned by institutions, whether they stand in high visibility tourist spots or in remote unknown alleys of the outskirts. And we share with you here some examples. You have here image from the route of Marquês in central Porto with one of the maps available at the route and also two of the points of interest, one Rua da Fábrica Social and the other Rua das Carvalheiras. And you only have here one image of each point of interest that includes, for instance, in the case of Rua da Fábrica Social, many, many more examples of interest and of street art interventions. Another example here in the historical center of Porto, classified by UNESCO by the River Douro. You have here one of the four maps of the route of São Bento and one of the points of interest, in this specific case, an intervention by the renowned Azul in the Rua da Madeira. Here now in Greater Porto, outside in the nearby small city of Vila do Conde, you have the map. As you can see, the route follows the coastline, and you also have an image from the point of interest, Mercado Municipal, that is to say the city market, paying homage and tribute to the fishing community. Also, we have 16 routes by author, and by author we recognize those artists with a style and a signature that is also recognized by the community. And these 16 routes by author were also organized over the existing geographical routes, which include, in this specific category of routes by author, we have 220 points of interest and 485 images. As examples, we have, for instance, the route of the renowned Azul, so prolific in the city of Porto. And here you have the map of the route of Azul, and also you have the very characteristic point of interest of Miradouro da Vitória, the Belvedere of Vitória, and in the city center, historical city center of Porto. Another example by a female artist, you have the route of the artist Rafi, the map, not as prolific as Azul, certainly, and the point of interest, Escola Estádio do Mar, that is to say the school, a basic school, stadium of the sea, and the motif that you have there illustrates clearly the relationship between women and the sea in these coastal communities of North Portugal. But also to tackle the effects of COVID-19 over tourism, and they are dramatic in Porto, as you know, Street Art Say is currently developing an award-winning spin-off project called Street Art Against COVID that registers the artworks that have popped up in the city while on lockdown, and we are on lockdown again. Through the international reach of digital channels, the project shows that the tourist potential of the region has managed to survive while reflecting the contingencies of history in the making. The 7 routes that we have already created in the sub-project, in spin-off Street Art Against COVID, they are organized in Uptown, Boa Vista, Historical Center, Eastern Porto, Douro River, Matosinhos, and the National Health Service, this specific route with the artworks that pay tribute to frontline health workers. And it is emblematic, the example that you have here, one point of interest of the route of the National Health Service. You have the map and also have the famous point of interest by Mr. Deo, situated in the outskirts of Vila Nova de Gaia, Rua Anselmo Brancamp, paying tribute to the nurse Sophia, the well-known, that has appeared in media all over the world. Concerning the work methods, sorry, I have a technical problem, just a minute. So once again, I would like to emphasize that the Street Art Against COVID displays right now 70 points of interest and 260 images, but they are in permanent update. They are constantly being updated and added new images. Concerning the work methods that we have been following, they involve photographing, categorizing, and extracting patterns of occurrence of graffiti and street art works that enable the creation of maps and routes. Data are organized in visual catalogs in the form of photo galleries. Access to data is grounded on a free web-based portal optimized for desktop and mobile devices. In order to be included in the project, works must first have been captured by the project staff as of October 2017. They must be visible to anyone with ordinary mobility in accessible and safe places. And also they must integrate a pattern of geographical recurrence that justifies the creation of a point of interest or the inclusion in a point of interest. Although the permanence of the work is impossible to assure, the project selects supports that guarantee a minimum of stability. That is why we are still not including works painted over mobile vehicles. So far, we are not including that section. Street Art Say does not include monochromatic graffiti tags, as they are mere signatures for the demarcation of a territory without communicative purposes beyond the restricted circle of the crew. Conversely, the project includes signatures that combine colors, perspectives, dimensions, and/or textures, that is to say, that display the purpose of communicating an aesthetic message decipherable by non-members of the crew, along with the codified demarcation of the territory. Street Art Say considers legal and illegal, marginal and commissioned graffiti and street artworks in equal terms. Collected images are selected and georeferenced, generating maps that reveal patterns of spatial recurrence of graffiti and street artworks. Maps are compared with existing street maps, maps of urban transports and other public infrastructures, in order to build a set of possible pedestrian and road paths. Subsequently, sections are organized around a recognizable and accessible spatial axis and named accordingly. This generates routes that a visitor may walk or drive along within a period of time of less than 12 hours under standard access conditions. Selected points of interest include diverse types of urban canvas, from commissioned murals to abandoned factories, from illegal houses to major train stations. Concerning the impact that we have obtained so far and stakeholders in general, up to the present, fieldwork has been carried out in the city of Porto, and you have here the figures for the inhabitants, as well as in all the cities of Greater Porto that we have already mentioned, and they have a combined total of 690,000 inhabitants. To this figure, we must also add Aveiro, south of Porto, as I had already said, that adds 55,000 inhabitants to the list. But the next stages of fieldwork will also cover other areas, such as Porto's inner ring road area, and also the nearby small and medium-sized cities of Braga, Barcelos, Guimarães, Ovar, Valongo, Estarreja, Espinho, and Agda. Street Art Say grants visibility to local artists and communities in their symbolic interaction with a territory threatened by mass tourism and gentrification. The project fosters the recognition of their creative value among multiple stakeholders, such as local municipalities, mainstream media, agents of local economy, art galleries, tourism agencies, and the scientific community. In order to promote local tourism and economy, peripheral municipalities from Greater Porto, such as Matosinhos and Vila Nova de Gaia, have commissioned tailor-made routes of graffiti and street art, along with other routes of cultural and heritage tourism through their regions. At the same time, radio, television, and digital and printed media have referred to the project extensively. And if you follow the link on my presentation later, you will see on the clipping section of the project website the many, many pages compiling all our presences in the mainstream media that have indeed paid a lot of attention to this project so far. We shall also say that Street Art Say is complemented by educational courses in entrepreneurship for cultural tourism, by organized tours that take place from time to time when confinement allows us to do so. And also we are right now developing another ongoing spin-off project on roots of street music in Porto. There are other forms of dissemination, and they include the online platform, which is visited every day from users all over the world, according to Google Analytics. We also have a presence in social media, articles, books, chapters, conferences like this one, and also dissertations that have already been produced and approved at the Masters in Intercultural Studies for Business of Porto's Polytechnic, that is the institution that hosts this project. So I think that I kept to the time. Thank you for your attention, and these are our links, and feel free to ask your questions and share your comments. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Clara. Thank you, Clara. I think that we are right on time. Maybe we should start immediately with Fatma, and then I'm sure that we'll have enough time to comment and discuss it later on. Fatma, if you're ready, yes, perfect.
Do you see now my?
Yes, I can. We can see, but we should put in a full screen mode.
Oh, sorry. It's at the end, so I have to go back. Sorry.
Okay.
Apologies. Yeah. No. Actually, I have a personal note. A thank you note to Clara for this amazing presentation. But also exactly 10 years ago, I lived in Porto and I worked in the building site of Vila do Conde. So you evoked my memories and this long journey that I committed myself to do my doctoral research actually takes its source of my experiences in one of the cities, Porto. So you evoked my memories. Thank you so much. So now I hope I can get back in the real time and present the presentation.
Fatma, if it's not a problem for you, just to put the full screen mode.
Yes, it is now in the full, but it doesn't, isn't it?
No, not at least I'm not seeing as a full. What works is maybe you can stop sharing screen. Okay, we'll try that one first of all.
How is it now?
Still nothing. What was working before, you can just
I stopped my sharing and
stop share and start it again. So yes, thank you.
Sorry.
No. Yeah, now it's perfect.
Yeah. Okay. So you see the empty postcard, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I start my presentation. And good morning again, and thanks for accepting my proposal. I'm happy to present in this webinar as a member of the Working Group 4. In my work, I focus on the role of history and memory for the present-day debates on port cities. I aim to establish links between past and present of a city through its narratives. In this presentation, first, I will share a method that I used in developing narratives. Second, I invite you to a mental journey to a cosmopolitan history of port city. And third, I will conclude my presentation with its relevance for today. Before moving on to the topic in detail, I'm a PhD candidate at TU Delft and currently completing my doctoral project titled Port City Culture of Izmir, where I worked in the intersection of art and architectural history by locating the cosmopolitan society in the heart of port city developments and production of urban cultures. The port city of Izmir offers a great opportunity to investigate the impact of social groups on that city. Izmir, like other East Mediterranean port cities, has been home to many different cultures between the 15th and 20th century. In the context of trade, cosmopolitanism secured social and economic networks and shared cultural settings. In my doctoral project, I wrote semi-fictional narratives to reveal multifaceted constitution of port cities and their cultures. To write the semi-fictional narratives, I worked closely with engravings, paintings, photographs, diaries, letters, novels, and travel notes. I cross-checked the sources to validate information and viewpoints of local residents and outsiders as much as I could. I formed a storyline of the semi-fictional narrative scene by scene. I tell the story through the eye of a traveler, who is a fictional character and strolls in the streets of the 19th century Izmir. I formed this character out of large number of real travelers that stop by Izmir. Scenes are based on the analytical frames while they are interwoven in the storyline. Now I will present a fragment from narratives that I wrote. After the long journey by boat, I took a moment to recover on the land. I found a spot to sit down, extending my legs into the sea. This would be the best way of quick recovery. Infinite blues refresh one's mind, and water had a comforting effect. The scent of the sea that came with the breeze was so relaxing. I looked around slowly. From where I was sitting, it felt like I was still in Europe. Looking around, I could see grand hotels, theaters, cafes, restaurants, bars, and clubs. The names of those buildings were in European languages. One could say the quay was also a sort of marine Champs-Élysées. The extensive row of large shops springing into existence may be expected to the well. I began to walk. A long street was extending along the bay, lined with beautiful houses. The elegant proportions of front facades created a continuous rhythm along the waterfront. The consulates and many fine marble front residences were located in this quarter on the street facing the quay. The houses didn't look alike. They were unique and one of their kind. But they had a lot in common: proportions, balconies, doors, and their relations with the public street all created a pattern in Smyrna. Amongst these common features, ornaments, decorations, and size of houses created differences. While I was looking with curious eyes at the harmony between the inhabitants of the neighborhood, the elegant facades and beautiful balconies of these houses, I got distracted by horseshoe noises. A horse-drawn carriage approached by me, and a driver with a fez stopped the horses in front of a fine white painted house. A lady with a hat said hello, while she and an old man were leaving the horse-drawn car. She invited me to have a coffee. I had a chance to see the house more in detail. It was a lucky day. This house had with 5 identical windows on each floor, and the shutters were fast closed. It was a warm day. Like in the Grand Hotel Hook, the building had a symmetrical facade and central balcony supported with consoles and added parapets. The building looked impressive. Its corners had fine works with rusticated stones on the ground floor. The upper floor facade had columns on the corners that made the building look even more monumental. Judging from the rich architecture of the building, it looked like this family had a high social status. I entered to the house. The lady who invited me was Jeanne Giffray. She was the daughter of local and well-known Giraud family. She was married with the son of Elie Giffray, who came to build the tram line in Smyrna. She explained that her family-in-law were related with the Dussault brothers, who built the port and quay. Giffray family also built the sporting club. Wow. While thinking of these intertwined relations established through marriages, my eyes captured quite a lot of details from the interiors. Within this luxury, I could be well in Paris, sitting in a living room of a Parisian house. The interior lighting effects were wonderful. The decorative details were magnificent. The house had large doors and spaces were interconnected with those wooden doors that had 2 wings. Door cases were detailed with carvings. The wall was partially covered by a wooden plate. Interior walls were covered with wallpapers. The living room had a chimney and a chandelier hanging from the ceiling. The furniture perfectly chosen to suit the house's style and comes from France. It includes, apart from chandeliers, some oriental items and the Smyrna rugs. For further scenes and another narratives of Izmir, please see the article that I co-authored with Klaske Hafik. I will put the link for this article in the chat box. It's not a coincidence that I picked up this scene over numerous scenes I have written in my PhD. The case of transformation of the 19th century house reveals the changes starting with the modern movement and its influences in the 20th century in port cities. It also shows the role of decision makers in building cities and the conservation of the cultural traces. Within the changes of political, economic, and technological developments that have direct implications in port cities, society and their memories remain as a main driver to connect port cities past and present. Traces of this era are embedded in the built environment as well as in the memories of the inhabitants. Inhabitants of Izmir particularly represent a strong longing and nostalgia for the cosmopolitan era of the city. To conclude, from the methodological perspective, writing narratives allows me to reveal the complexity of port city developments as a scholar. In one scene of a larger story, I was able to touch upon the role of the networks in trade, social status, and social-spatial practices in the constitution of a port city. Moreover, I reflected on the notion of familiarity and feeling home that are specific to port cities. The arrival of the traveler by boat shows the realities of the 19th century and how the city was perceived from the sea. That was an important aspect for the trade, as well as it is still an important insight to consider in the contemporary design approaches. The topic of sustainable port city developments has an important place in the agenda of port city actors, including stakeholders, port authorities, municipalities of port cities, development agencies. Academic partners began to be interested in the topic of port city cultures in relation to the port, city, and citizens. A worldwide port city network, International Association of Port Cities, emphasized on the importance of port city cultures for the development of port cities. The sustainable development of port cities lies in the cultural connections. Writing narratives of the cosmopolitan era of the city has a potential to contribute to the cultural ties as well as to the ongoing debate, as also narratives plays key role in the communication with diverse audience. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, Fatma. Maybe Annalisa, if you have a presentation, you can share the screen, or you can start the comments as a respondent to the projects of Clara and Fatma.
Yeah, I can try to share the screen. Although hopefully I'll get the right one.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it's supposed to be.
Can you hold on, because
yes,
I can't.
We can see. We can see. Just maybe you can just click the button for the full screen.
Yeah.
No, the one. Okay.
Okay. Okay. Do you have the full screen?
Yes. Now we have. Perfect.
Okay. So first of all, thank you very much, because it really gave me this opportunity to reflect a little bit on these topics and to listen and read about these two very interesting projects and presentations. So a little bit about me. So this that you can see in the picture is, because we're talking about mapping, is the route that keeps me sane during COVID, near within the 5K that I can explore within, from my house, because we are in lockdown in Ireland. So it's really the meaningful route for me to, to relieve my mental stress. So I think it's actually quite interesting, because being based in Cork, although I'm Italian, as you can probably hear from my accent, Cork actually is interesting because there is a lot of graffiti, and very meaningful graffiti, and is also a port city. So it really joins these two presentations nicely. And I picked this one, this graffiti here, and Dublin ruling Cork, because it's really symbolically, you can find these very spontaneously appearing all over the city, and they're very meaningful. So this one, Cork as a historic, let's say, competition with Dublin, that is of course the capital city, and Cork's define itself as the real capital. So these graffiti actually convey a lot of meaning for the people, and they're not just there to please the eye, but they are really conveying the people's sentiment and the artist's sentiment about the city. So I thought it was very interesting. So what I really loved about the first project, well, loads of things, but I was looking at the website yesterday, and I thought the idea of having this open repository is really interesting, and you can see the maps, and it really reminded me in some ways, although it's a very different approach, from an art piece that I saw years ago by Tim Clark, and it was called Atlas of the Habitual. And what he did is he tracked himself with GPS, and he basically built maps of different aspects of his life. So this one that you see here is a bit negative, forgive me, is the one that I found, is unpleasantries. So is all the routes where he experienced unpleasantness going along that route for where he was going, for what happened in the route. And I thought it was really interesting when I came across this years ago. And really your project gave me the same sense of opportunity to share in the daily life that I thought it was really good, you know, because of course is, you know, it's interesting to have art galleries and, you know, there are important pieces there and monuments in the cities, but this sharing of meaning in daily life that you can have in, you know, going to work or, you know, following, you can pick one of these routes maybe to go to work or to go for your grocery shopping. And it's really enriching your life on a daily basis. And I thought it's a really interesting way that people can avail of this for free. And, you know, it's a very nice way to share culture and share experience. So also I really liked the idea that there is an ecosystem built around this. You know, now there is businesses, there is tourism, there is, you know, there seems to be a lot of richness around this project that, you know, is much more than experiencing something, you know, pleasant to see. But it's a whole culture that is growing around the project and around the graffiti. So I thought that's really rich for, you know, for the people involved, for the tourists, for, you know, it creates a whole culture around that. So I thought it was really interesting. And the methodological aspect, you know, how it was done, that, you know, that Clara described, how it was done, what were the choices behind, you know, picking certain graffiti, because, you know, you couldn't, of course, include everything. So what was the rationale and the roots? So I thought there is a lot of interesting work behind, and it's a really alive project, you know, that keeps going and keeps producing. And the new sort of COVID spin-off, it's really powerful, and again shows how the project is alive and interacting with the city, which I thought was really, really powerful and really interesting. So again, going back from my cognitive science background, I couldn't help but referring to that. And because in Cork, what we're doing is we're starting, well, we were before COVID locked us in 5 kilometers. We were starting to look at walkable EEG and how people brain patterns change when you walk in different areas of the city or when you walk through a park versus, you know, a busy shop area in the city versus a sort of in-between boulevard. So that's the study that we have now. And this is just a raw EEG trace for, you know, one of these participants walking in a particular area. And I thought, you know, in some ways, you, with all these different routes, you would have different brain stimulation. And that's really interesting. You know, in some ways, I think it would be interesting to capture at some point how people walk around and experience these places, you know, from the very basic brain level in different ways, and probably activate different, you know, areas and because of the emotions and the visual that you get and the, you know, the sense of meaning. So I think it's really interesting potentially from, you know, from the meaning level, but also from, you know, the very basic cognitive neuroscience level. And the other thing that I thought it reminded me, I heard, so the other interest of mine is nature and how nature contributes to our cognitive and overall well-being. And I heard of this project in Melbourne a few years ago, where they gave email addresses to trees. And initially in the project, apparently they gave email addresses to trees because they wanted people to see if there were vandalism, you know, kind of more a practical objective. But what happened is loads of people started to email what the trees meant to them. So they found themselves with this, I don't know if it was the city council or something like that. They found themselves with this, you know, huge amount of expressing meaning that they didn't expect. And I thought, I see that you have a lot of interaction in, you know, social media and this kind of thing. And I thought it would be interesting, maybe you're doing it already, to capture what these different routes mean for people. Because, you know, I think there is probably a lot of, you know, I think they probably add a lot to their life, like these trees added to this life of these people in Melbourne. And I think ways to capture that would be very interesting. So that was the idea that I got. And yeah, I thought it was really thought-provoking project, really interesting for me. And in similar ways, as I was saying, I was really captivated by the second project as well, because Cork is a port city as well. And it's very much a footprint of the city to be a port city. So tell me if I'm talking too much, because I'm not really taking track of time.
Well, a couple of more minutes, perfect.
So I thought it was really fascinating because I think in Cork there is the same, in some ways I perceived a tension in between really in the presentation, but even more so in the piece that you sent me, between, you know, me expressing and capturing this rich cultural heritage and the new waves of culture that came about, and, you know, whether this is in contrast or not, and how to capture all the different cultures of this city. So I thought that was really interesting, and probably I'd say not as varied, I suppose, in Cork, but certainly there is a little bit of that here too. And I thought it was really methodologically powerful, the idea of telling the story through the eye of the traveler, because one of the difficult things is to perceive something as with somebody else's perspective. And again, you know, going back to my cognitive background, you know, sometimes if somebody tells you a story, it's just very difficult for yourself to understand what was the experience of other people, or whereas this helps very much, I think, the person to embed themselves into the perspective. And so I thought it was really interesting. And I think the engagement with the lived experience of people and sort of verify them, you know, forgive the term, with, you know, the sources. And it was a really interesting approach as well. So, and one thought that I had is, of course, because, you know, it's not possible to, probably very difficult or impossible to access sounds of the past, but, you know, so there is a lot of pictures, but at least for the current times, I think soundscapes will be something very interesting, because port cities have a lot of sound. So I thought it was something that maybe can thought of, you know, not as much for the past, but for the future. But yeah, I thought it was very interesting in that respect, and it made me think about, in some ways, building new meanings. And this is actually, you can't really see it from the photo, but it's how do you call it? Near the shore in Cork. and is where it's a part of the Cork harbor that is not in use anymore, and this is near where I live, and so there are all the bits of the port, but they're not in use anymore. So now there is a form of reappropriation where, you know, biodiversity groups go and try to do something, or there is, for example, some small community-based projects looking at older people telling the story of what it was before and try to connect it with what we can do now with these abandoned structures. So, I thought the project was very interesting from this perspective, that it captures this cultural heritage in a very lively way with this perspective of the traveler, and it can offer a lot in terms of you know, building a sustainable future for port cities based on this cultural heritage and the new forms of culture that are emerging. So I really liked during the presentation that it was mentioned culture of connection for port cities, and I thought that was really key word to, you know, to capture this connection with the past, with different cultures, with the present, and so I thought it was very powerful in that sense. So yeah, so that's all I have to say. Thank you very much. It was really interesting.
Thank you, Annalisa. Maybe you can switch off the share screen. Perfect. Thank you all as well. Now we have, yes, I think, yes, we have at least 15 minutes, just enough time to pose some questions. I'm really happy that the chat section of the Zoom meeting is quite lively, which means that we have, I mean, people are finding themselves within the discussions that we are opening this morning, despite the fact that many of us are coming, all of us are coming from different various disciplines. So it's really challenging for Working Group 4 to, let's say, amalgamate, connect all these different approaches, but it's really promising that actually people are writing here, supporting each other, and basically recognize their work into the work of the others. So maybe I could start the question session. I would ask if anybody have to pose question. Maybe just briefly at the beginning, I would like to ask the presenters of the project if they want to give additional comment on their project. But basically, what we prefer would be to give a comment within the light of the comments of the respondents. So if Juan, Fatma, Clara have some brief comment, please feel free to share with us, and then I will ask other participants. Yes, Fatma, please.
Thanks.
You can also raise questions with the section, you know, raising hand. It's a Zoom tool. So just in order to see you all, because we have more than 50 participants, so I cannot see all of you within the screen. So Fatma, please.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Annalisa, for your comments, and yeah, thanks actually everyone for your comments as well. Yeah, they started from the final point, like the cultural connections. Actually, it's yeah, thanks for highlighting that. I also see with the reactions that actually it's the cultural settings are also shared. So this is also valuable. It's not only the past and present cultural ties between the past and present, but maybe amongst the port cities. I should also add that now you just made me think about it. And about the soundscape, it's really, really nice. And I think listening to Fado in Portugal had also a lot in my own choices. And it reminded me a lot Repetico, which actually started in Izmir, Smyrna historically, and then it went to Athens. So this whole and it touches immediately to your heart, and I think it evokes all the memories, and it opens up all the folders related to these cultural settings. And it's fascinating to see that you have this in different geographies, and I could feel the same feelings in Porto, I could feel it at Athens, I could feel in Simena. So this is a really nice and very powerful addition. At the moment, yeah, it doesn't exist in my PhD for various reasons, but definitely in the future projects, I would like to engage with that. Thanks for your remarks.
Well, thank you, Fatma. I saw one raised hand. Okay, Clara, yes,
Yeah.
sorry.
Thank you so much, Fatima, for a wonderful presentation. And thank you, Annalisa, for your careful reading of our works. It was also fascinating what you have touched, indeed, the importance of art in daily life itineraries. That is one of the main purposes of this project, that is also keeping us somehow sane amongst these masses of lockdown, certainly, just as it's happening with you in Ireland. And indeed, we have also said that these daily life itineraries, we can see art in our daily life itineraries, and also we can indeed recognize aesthetic territories while walking in along the city. We see how different forms of art we can find in different neighborhoods, in different streets. And also that you have touched another very relevant point for, and I'm glad that you have touched it, because we really pay a lot of attention to non-commissioned works of art, to illegal works of art on the same grounds as those ones which have been commissioned and paid to show up in very important touristic spots. And then I would like to ask you, and that is very important for our research as well, those examples that you have shared in Cork, the first images that you have shared, are they commissioned or illegal? The ones in between Cork and Ireland are. Annalisa, that's a very important question for us. That's a very important topic for us, because we have quite similar examples in energy box along the streets. So I would like to know, where are those works painted on?
Yeah, so I think now, I'm not 100% sure, but my impression is that those are they're not commissioned, they're just spontaneous, because they just pop up all over the place in the city and they have different topics. Because I know that there are commissioned graffiti on specific buildings. They're much bigger, they're by known artists. I can find out more specifically, but because there is a Twitter group that take photos of all of them and shares them, but I think they're not too, as far as I know.
And thank you for bringing this example to our attention. And Fatma, concerning the soundscapes in urban cities, there is a very interesting project going on in Macau, led by Álvaro Barbosa at the St. Joseph University of Macau. If you search for him or for the project itself, it's about the soundscapes in Macau, also in the vertical sense of the city. As you have as high skyscraper city, you have the several soundscapes. While you go up the buildings, you sense the several sounds, what you feel in each level, in each story. So it's a very interesting project as well, going on in a very similar urban city as Macau. And Annalisa, thank you also for bringing us the topic of the emotions, the different emotions while walking along these routes, how you connect different emotions to different routes, whether you are in the city center, whether you are in a remote alley, in a derelict area of town. So those are very, very interesting comments that touch so deeply at the heart, at the core of the purpose of this project. So very, very, thank you so much, very well.
Thank you, Clara. Maria Bostanaro, please.
Yes, thank you. I have a question to Juan, because he showed us this film, which I could not understand so well, on the gastronomic heritage and the relation to the built environment. And now in the pandemics, I'm also experiencing that one can travel through the gastronomic heritage, like eating something from somewhere. It's like in Marcel Proust with smell which transport you somewhere, but I'd like to hear his view. This is one question. And the other, I already wrote in the chat, it's regarding port cities. We have a doctoral candidate who is looking to the explosion in Beirut and how this, of course, affects differently. And I wanted to ask if it's relevant for the action to send her to an ITC. Thank you.
Well, I'm not sure who might answer that. Maybe Juan at the beginning, and maybe Klaske or Susanna briefly, or we can also discuss that this ITC section into the chat, just to leave more space for discussing the topic. But Juan, maybe you can, if Juan is here, I'm not sure.
I saw him, but he disappeared.
Okay, well, it's the way how it works, Zoom. Maybe later on, or maybe you can write that in the chat, just addressing Juan, and he will probably join us later on. I think we can go further on with Adriana Martins. Yes, please.
Well, good morning, everyone. And I would like, first of all, to congratulate the organizers for this webinar. I think it has been very productive. In fact, I do not have a question, but I have a comment. And this comment somehow is in line with the mini conference, the mini online conference we had before within the framework of the activities of working group number 2. It was amazing to see how street art has been brought to academia. And why? Because we still observe, at least as far as my experience is concerned, a certain resistance on the part of academics to discuss street art in academia. And I think that these presentations today and other presentations we have had prove how important street art is to writing places, to writing urban places. So I think this is a kind of research trend that must be valued and must be followed. And it is very interesting to take profit from the cost network also to address this issue from a comparative perspective. And personally speaking, and bear in mind my research interests, I think that street art from a comparative perspective can help us delineate or try to understand how street art contributes to a kind of geography of affects. And affect has been referred to here in different presentations, in different ways. But I think that perhaps we should invest more in this in our discussion. So thank you.
Thank you, Adriana. Maybe somebody else want to contribute with a comment? Okay, then because we're almost out of time, just to keep track with the schedule, maybe I could give a short comment. Since all of the projects are obviously connected to fieldwork and are projects that recognize certain value of existing, which was the Juan's case, and then the lost one, Fatma case, and then the newly emerged places of identity, such was the case with Porto graffiti culture. and very lively culture. I can see from all the links that were posted in the chat, referring to the activity of graffiti all around Europe. So could you tell us on the direct effect this effort of mapping have on local community? Do these places that you have presented become more meaningful to people living in these areas of Spain or of Porto or in Izmir? So do you have this kind of feedback in terms of how local inhabitants react? Are they aware about the projects that you're working on and the research that you're doing, and how it affects them on understanding the living conditions, their living conditions? So maybe just brief comments from the presenters. I guess that Clara could give comment on this for sure. Maybe
I'll try my best, but indeed, when the local communities see their streets, their artworks that are part of their neighborhoods, long forgotten in most cases, when they see works on the main televisions about it, they feel that they are somehow recognized by the elites, by the ruling powers, both economical and the media. And also this sort of project also, and the coverage by the media also attracts visitors to those areas of town. Some of the areas are already recognized and very touristic spots, but some others are more located in the outskirts and not that populated by tourists and by all the economy turmoil that it brings. Therefore, indeed, it brings a self-awareness, a sort of a self-empowerment to the communities due to the general recognition and general visibility, and visibility is power, of the artworks that exist within their daily routines and their daily territories and itineraries. So it's a wide recognition, a wide vision of what is hidden within some remote areas of the city and the outskirt areas of the city as well, because they are totally outside of the main itineraries of tourism. We have two different worlds in Porto and nearby cities, because we have the city center, the historical center, with, before COVID, of course, all the tourism influx, and we have all the outskirt areas, nearby areas, the outer areas of Porto that were still ignored by tourism. And this was also one way of bring it to the general knowledge at the national and international audience, certainly. So it was a sort of empowerment even for their cultural identity.
Mm-hmm. Fatma, your work is underway. So, but do you have some kind of expectations out of it? I mean, how because it's one way official how they react on it, and you mentioned that in your work. But then the local inhabitants, basically, in this part of Izmir, it's a huge city, but
yeah, with some of the locals, actually, I was in touch before I started my PhD, because actually there are many local writers who does it. I don't know. It just, they are just doing it. I see this attachment to their history. So it was actually one of the reasons that I wanted to form my research on this way. They are, some of them are informed, let's say. I keep them informed in an informal way, like sometimes just saluting them out and sending my text for the local inhabitants who are individually interested in the history and the culture of the city. On the other hand, I'm in touch with Levantine Heritage Foundation. I also keep them informed. It's a foundation formed with the descendant of this elite traders or the 19th century inhabitants of Izmir. So they are informed. On the other hand, Tarkem, it's also a developer that is working closely together with the municipality. They are informed that I am doing something like this. And also the mayor, I keep him quite frequently informed about the developments. And it's good that I don't feel sort of an opposition between the power and the locals. So that is, and I think, an important moment for the history of the city. And the mayor has a really keen understanding on the cosmopolitan history of the city. And he puts this port city identity as the main focus in his own political agenda. And so these development, also the UNESCO, sorry, there are many parties I recognize. I talked to the UNESCO in a very official way with the article, making some suggestions, but I did not have any contact with the National Committee yet. I just contacted with the consultants, the professors who are working with the National Committee. So people are gradually being informed in diverse ways and channels. But I hope to make a larger, let's say, engagement, perhaps after the PhD. Now, many things on the tray, and I hope to engage with them afterwards, hopefully with other developed projects coming out of my PhD.
Perfect, perfect. Just keep pushing and informing the officials, the mayors, and in most of the cases, they're really this experiences like yours could really enrich their understanding of the city,
Yes.
which is going to be fruitful for the further development of any areas they're managing with. Okay, thank you, Jorge. You have a short comment. You mentioned
that's a practical question. I'm not going to well, thank you first for your presentation. It's very beautiful, but I'm not going to comment on the content. Rather, being a little bit more practical is, I can imagine, specifically in the case of Clara, and because of the video that was presented by Juan, that these projects have some media attention, no? That this must have been registered in the newspapers, in television channels, radio stations, so on and so forth. Please send us that information. We register news in the sense that the activities that we produce are considered to be news to us, but also, as you have seen in the newsletter, we love to register appearances of our work in the news. So whenever that happens, whenever you appear on the radio, on the television, on newspapers, on blogs, on any kind of media that you consider relevant, please let us know so we can also share that with everyone. That was just my short note. Thank you.
Okay, and Jorge, just a clarification, it's not a problem at all whether it's not subtitled or something. So basically, because it's going to find its own audience.
Yeah, we just register that we are producing events and information and knowledge that is registered in the news. We have to translate it with just a link to that other realm where we also want to participate.
I've just shared the link to the clipping section of the project on the chat, okay? You go there and everything you have to turn virtually several pages, and you have the radio, you have the printed press, and you have the pieces on the news, okay? And we had like a share of 500,000 viewers doing, according to the telemetries, and in Portugal, that's a lot, okay? So well, that's a lot. So you have several videos, everything, you have several pages there. Just go there, just follow.
Okay, perfect. Maybe Jorge, you're okay because you're muted.
I just said perfect. Thanks.
Yes, yes. Maybe just one small question from somebody or comment, or we can wrap up the first part of this webinar today. Somebody? We can also conclude the first session. Let me just check if somebody raised a hand or no. Okay, then we can conclude the first session and take a break. Let's say almost an hour. We have almost we have 50 minutes up to the next session. See you all back for the next session, the session which will be hosted by Luis. It starts on 1:00 p.m. I would just like you to please log in at least 5 minutes before, so we can start the session right on time. I would also like to because some of you are moving from the Zoom meeting, have other obligation as well. It's during the whole day event. So, but that's why I really like to remind you that the webinar today will end up with the roundtable discussion, starting from 5 o'clock in the afternoon, Central European time, in which we can further continue the discussion. I really encourage presenters and respondents to be there. Of course, members of the working group 4 and all the members on the COST meeting are very welcome to join us and to really discuss about the future development of the field work, because we hope that all this confinement will end up eventually and we can continue working in a full strength. I will just say goodbye for now. We'll meet again in 1 o'clock, so in 50 minutes from now. Bye.